What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Brewtally Speaking Podcast, the official podcast of MetalNexus.net, where you can get all your show reviews, concert reviews, and so much more. And with me, as always, is Daniel Terry. How are you doing this evening?
Oh, I'm doing good, man. I'm recovering from that interview we did.
Yeah, I have been recovering from Sonic Temple Festival, so having you do the heavy lifting on this episode was really nice. This episode's guest is Cory Brandan, vocalist for Norma Jean and 100 Sons, and I feel like, I completed a Make-A-Wish thing here. I think Dan has pretty much gotten to talk to everyone from all of his favorite bands at this point.
Yeah, I mean, we got Zao, Hope's Fall, Norma Jean.
Who's left at this point for you?
Well, it's definitely not Demon Hunter, but that was a good chat.
Would it be Josh Scogin? Is that really one of the last ones?
Yeah, let's go ahead and just get Josh Scogin on here, and then, then we'll be good.
All right, well, when 68 gets done recording the new record, which they actually just announced who's recording it, and that the fact that they are recording, we can potentially make that happen, I bet.
That would be a lot of fun. Hopefully he'll give us really weird, obtuse answers like he gives everybody else in interviews.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, this is a fun one. Dan has been working on getting Cory on discography discussion for a hot minute now, and it was one of those things where I think that's going to happen as a result of doing this episode, but not unfortunately, I don't know maybe the adjective I want to use, but with doing this podcast, we are in a unique position to a lot of times get the band people on, whether it is to promote a record, whether it's to talk, preemptively about a record and so forth. So this is one that Dan had been working on for a while, like I said, and kind of came to fruition thanks to Cory being a internet troll, as he self-described internet troll, and once the European tour with Norma Jean and Light the Torch and In Flames was wrapped up, he went on Twitter and was like, "Yo, who hit me up to do a podcast? Let's do it." And much to Dan's chagrin, the whole internet replied back to that.
I know, and I'm like the little guy in the back of the room raising my hand slowly, being like, "It was me. It was me. I was the one that did it." So that'd be funny because he's doing interviews. I think he said like all day today. So like. It'll be kind of funny how many people end up saying that too. Like, oh yeah, it was me.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it is. Maybe that's the thing in the day and age of the internet. You don't know who actually had reached out to him, who had sent emails and so forth. I think you were a lot more low key about it in tweeting him and then sending him emails. But, I mean, I think that kind of speaks to the fact that, Cory, I didn't really necessarily know how this interview was going to go. Some people have said that Cory really likes to talk. Some people have I've heard and read that he's kind of short with his answers. And
I didn't get that at all.
No, not at all. I found this to be a really fun, engaging chat. As Dan was kind of saying right before we started, it was very much like he just hopped in the middle of the conversation Dan and I were already having. There was some audio issues on my end. For whatever reason, my internet decided that I needed to update Skype, needed to update the software to record everything, decided to just be a big pile of shit. So there are occasions where I might have cut out or whatever, but, it is what it is. Dan, like I said, handled most of the conversation. And
I have a laptop. I recorded all of it. We're good.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where, I think this is a fun, engaging chat. I think very much like the one we did with Ryan from Demon Hunter, the one we were able to do with Adam of Hope's Fall. I think, Dan's lifelong fandom of the band adds an interesting countermeasure to me not being as avid of a fan as Dan is on this. I think it would almost be, the thing that would be interesting, and if we can ever do an Every Time I Die episode where like both of us are on it with whomever, I think it would almost be the same thing where Dan's like probably is more aware of Every Time I Die's discography, but I don't think he's like as rabid of a fan as I am about the band. So it would almost be like that for him, like where he would just be like, yeah, I like this one record, and let me ask you some questions about the band as a whole.
Right, yeah. Absolutely. It's definitely hot damn for me. But
that's where you fell off after that you were done?
I didn't. No, I mean, I never fell off. But that was just my favorite record by them. Still is.
I guess that's kind of the interesting thing about Norma Jean for me is, like, I remember, and I kind of wanted to bring this up because I wasn't sure if this was something that the band felt. And maybe you can explain this a little more than I can. But I remember seeing the band on Warped Tour when, I think it was Anti-Mother. Is that the one with the bird pecking on the lady?
That was Redeemer. So yeah, that was the album before the Anti-Mother.
Okay, so on Redeemer, I just remember the big backdrop. I went and saw the Warped Tour that year, and they were the opening band on Warped Tour at our date, and people just didn't seem to give a shit. The band didn't seem to give a shit. And it was kind of disheartening because it was one of the first times I had seen the band and been like actively wanting to see the band.
Right.
And to see a band just not really seemingly care and the fans not really seemingly care just kind of left like a, all right, I guess that's Norma Jean. That's Norma Jean now for me and for everybody else. Like, people just don't care. And what's weird, though, is I remember a lot of people liking that record, so I was pleasantly surprised that people didn't seem to care and weren't really showing up and supporting the band at that point. Maybe it's just way too early for people to be, like, ready to start push moshing.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of it's kind of a weird way of looking at it, John. But no, I get you 100%. I definitely enjoyed doing this conversation because I had never, like, there's so many things, like, when you're a lifelong fan of the band, sometimes you make the mistake of assuming that you just, like, really closely know the person, even though you haven't really, like, the only real connection you've had to them is through their art, which is, another conversation that with another band that we'll do later, but, or before, I don't know what order they're going to come out, but, making that connection to the art. And so it's always good to have that conversation and realize, oh, okay, I was right about this, and this. And now I have it from the horse's mouth that's the way, that's what the mindset was into whatever record or song or idea or theme. We talked a lot about themes in the conversation. So that was definitely a lot of fun. And it is weird. I'll talk a little bit about this in the intro, though, or I'm sorry, in the outro, about people assuming that they know you as in relation to podcasts.
Yeah, this is actually a longer episode, so let's just get right into the swing of things and get right into our conversation with Cory Brandan of Norma Jean, and we'll talk to you guys afterwards.
And we have the pleasure this early afternoon of speaking with Cory Brandan of Norma Jean. How are you doing at 12 o'clock on what is today, Tuesday or Wednesday?
It's Wednesday. I'm here. Thanks for having me. It's a good life if you don't remember what day it is, by the way.
Absolutely. Well, I've got 3 kids, so like I can't tell you most of the time what time it is, what day. They're all real little, too, so it's like constant, just go,
yeah.
go. But I somehow managed to get an afternoon without everybody, so I thought I'd spend it with you. So
cool, man. I'm down.
So you just got out of the studio.
Yeah, did.
Like 10 minutes ago? Seems like.
we started writing early 2018. We did one tour last year, and then we did a few spot dates here and there, but we took the whole year of 2018 off to write this next album. And it was stressful, but we went to the studio in February with Will Putney. I don't think we've even announced that yet. I don't think anybody knows.
No.
You haven't.
World exclusive right here.
It might be out there, but I think I've tweeted about it here and there. But anyway, it is done. We're in mixing stage now, and we just did a European tour with In Flames. So I just got back from that. But we went straight from the studio. We were home for like 2 weeks and then hit that tour. And I got a little time off before we get really, really busy.
Yeah, I can imagine jumping right out of a studio and just jumping right into like being tour ready is quite the stress. And so whenever you're on that tour, were you guys playing anything new, any teasers, or I don't think anything's been teased or anything.
No, what we always think about that when we talk about it, like, hey, do we want to play anything new off this album? But what happens is everyone films it and records it, and you end up with bad audio and video first impression of a brand new song. So the last couple of records, we've preferred to at least wait till one song is dropped, and then we'll play that one. So maybe next tour in July, we're out with Fit for a King, and yeah,
There it is.
there's so many tours coming up, man. Fit for a King and a few other bands. So we'll have something out by then, I think, and we'll maybe play something new. We'll see what's up.
Well, and speaking to the last album now, well, you know what, John, I'm gonna give you the opportunity to ask some questions because I could go all day. So,
I'll just kind of say right out the gate, something that we have been, or I should say I have been a stickler for, has been the EP versus full length thing. Obviously, it's been not a complete 3-year differential between when you're going to put out this new record from Polar Similar, but I did want to know, you dropped Children of the Dead, and so it kind of makes me wonder, are you guys getting pressure from a label to kind of keep content out there, keep your name out there from a label perspective of just being like, people are going to forget about you? Or is it something that you just want to keep dropping new music for people because it's fresh, it's new, and it's what you're excited about currently?
It's kind of both. And yeah, I mean, I guess you could say the label does, I wouldn't call it pressure, but they want, it's just part of our team, and they want us to be successful. If we are, they are. And Solid State has been really, really awesome to us. And the reason we dropped Children of the Dead was because we did the deluxe vinyl box set for Polar Similar, and Children of the Dead was a B-side to that album. It's just a song that we didn't want to put on the record. So, we had it just kind of chilling, and we knew that we were going to release this vinyl eventually. That was the original idea and layout for Polar Similar, but budgeting is hard to get that kind of stuff done. I mean, it had like feathers, like bird feathers in it and stuff, like little twist on little envelopes and all kinds of, lithographs and cool stuff in there. So they did promise us that we would get to it after the record, but that was our first record back with Solid State, and I think it was kind of we'll see how things go. But now we're at a point where, I mean, we just had a conversation the other day about the new album and where we want to take that, and it was just a lot of yeses. You're like, yeah, we're going to do that. We're going to do that. Let's do this and this too. So a lot of content will be a little more steady with that stuff. And I mean, truthfully, we're just bad at it. Like, I don't know. We're a little bit older, and I don't know what I'm doing, man. Most of the time I'm just tweeting nonsense and trolling people. So the internet is just my playground, if anything.
Well, I think that's something Dan and I have talked about to each other and with people on this podcast, is talking about how, for a lot of you, this started off being something you started as teenagers. And then the flip side of that is now all of a sudden you have to become businessmen and marketing people and all this other stuff that isn't what you signed up for. It's almost like a lack of responsibility is kind of what you wanted. And in turn, now all of a sudden you have to start thinking about things from a financial perspective, from a business perspective, and you as a person, you as Cory Brandan become a product. And it's like, no, that's not what happened to just getting into a room with my friends and fucking making noise that we enjoy. Like, Dan and I have kind of really talked about that quite a bit, and just kind of how weird that is that, for a band such as yourself, looking at almost, 20-year career or so, that it's like, that's not what it started as, and now here you are, and you're still expected to kind of have to look at layouts of things, and you're like, I don't know, like, just do something cool. Don't make me look like a dick.
Yeah, dude, you're speaking the truth. I mean, that's like, you preached it just now. That was great, because I always tell people when I was 8 years old and I wanted to be a musician, nobody told me that it's mostly a desk job. It's right. You're emailing. I mean, for the first several years of your life, you're booking your own tours. You're putting out your own things, and another part of it too that I always tell people is a good 75% of being in a band is talking people into being in a band with you.
Oh my God,
You know?
you're not wrong at all about that. Yeah.
And so, you know, at first you're a local thing. You're going to find guys who are like, yeah, let's do it. And then when, you know, you find out how much work is actually involved, people start dropping like flies. And at this point, you know, Norma Jean is all over the country. You know, we're none of us are from the same town anymore, besides me and one other guy, which is just luck of the draw. So, yeah, I mean, it's a lot of work, but it's kind of the thing where, you know, when you pick a job where you get to make your own hours, you end up picking 24/7, 365. You want to do it, and it does get to a place where, you know, like even, you know, going from the studio 2 weeks off straight into a tour. Yeah, there's stress. You're not going to get around that. I mean, the biggest stress is that you're leaving and you're not going to see your family for a little bit. But we were off for so long, I couldn't wait. And the drive is there. So it's there more now than it was 10 years ago for me. So I want to do it even harder. And I believe in it. I think what we do in a lot of bands, any band, I think what music does for people is important. So, you know, our lives are changed. For me, it's happened with me. I have bands that changed my life, you know, got me through stuff. So we hear those same kind of stories, and it makes us look at it differently and think, oh, this isn't just, you know, it isn't just messing around in a garage with your friends. You know, it has an impact. And so we better make sure that we're doing it right, especially if we're going to spend time away from our family. Always be doing it right.
So is there kind of a burden of responsibility there that you sometimes feel when going into writing a new record? I know Polar Similar definitely dealt with some pretty heavy subjects and stuff like that. Do you ever just have that urge to like, oh, I just want to put out a fun record, or I want to put out a super serious one? Or do you ever feel like you kind of have to make a certain record in order to quote unquote appease the fans? I mean, I understand that there's fans that are just like, just play the first album in its entire,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like,
and we love those fans too. I mean, we love all of our records.
You've done it. You've gone out and played the first album. It's like, hey, if that's what you want, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you know, everybody has those records. They're, you know, your favorite band, and then from that band, you have your favorite album. And then you might only like that one, or you might like the first one and the middle one, or, you know, bands expecting their fans to like everything they do is ridiculous. You don't do that, band guy. You know, I always tell people one of my favorite bands is the Smashing Pumpkins. My favorite album is Siamese Dream. I like some stuff after that. That's my favorite one though. And so when someone tells me, Oh God, the Aftermath is the only record I like or something, I'm like, cool. That makes you a Norma Jean fan. Like, you like one record, that's cool, because we like that record too, and we're going to play it as much as we can. But no, yes, we do think, to answer the original question, all the time we think, let's just not give a shit and do a whole record of feedback and breakdowns.
Right.
But when you actually get in the room, different ideas come out and bigger ideas, and you work together and it changes into something else. So what we try to do is at least have that one song. So on every album, for sure, if you like earlier stuff, on every album, there's at least one or two songs that were written with that intention. And I don't see anything wrong with that. The idea of, we're just going to make this record for us, we don't give a crap what anybody thinks. I think that takes away a little bit of the power behind music, and that you can embrace that and say, yeah, I want to write at least a song for these people. I want them to have something, and that kind of makes you think creatively in a different way. So I don't know. When it comes to music, I try to not lose in that and all of those different areas, and try to find a way to make any of those things that could be thought of as negative into a positive somehow. And it's all experimenting. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Dan did an episode, their 100th episode of Discography Discussion. They did it on Norma Jean. Dan has been, I would safe to say, a lifelong fan from the first record on. I have been kind of more in that boat of, like you're saying, where I kind of dip in and out based on the records that find me at that time. As such, I was definitely not a fan of the band when they first started. So as such, it kind of does make me wonder when there really aren't... The majority of the band at this point is not the band that started. Why do you feel the need to still satiate fans that are from so long ago when it's clear that you guys have kind of struck out far beyond that at this point, especially with the last record?
Yeah, I think that's not a thing that's at the top of the list. It's kind of a thing where, like I said, we love those albums too. And so it's not like we're ever doing anything that we don't want to do. We just think of it as we want to do it because we want to give something in that world, because that's, it's okay to love your roots. But for us, it's a little too, it's like too easy, it's like an adolescent world to us to come from there. And you grow and you experiment, and you change and you get new ideas. And so that's mostly what we're going to do. But, it's for the fans in a sense of, if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. I just don't think that, if anybody that follows Norma Jean knows that we don't talk about the inner workings of the band, and we do that on purpose because I think that it just gets in the way. And I think that kind of marketing of, here's a promo picture, which every band has to do, like we got to do them too. And like, here's the faces that you should, think about when you hear this band name and this music. And I separate all of those things. When I see the 5 people in the picture, I see 5 separate individuals with totally different backgrounds and trajectories in life and different ideas for music, how they want to create. I see a band name that's a placeholder so you can find the music when you need to. It used to be in a music store, not so much, whatever. Now it's on a search engine, fine. And then you have the music. And I want the music to have a voice of its own. And at the end of the day, it's always, do you like it or not? And I think all that other kind of stuff shouldn't matter as much. Who made it? It's like, okay, you can care about that if you want. But the Beatles was a boy band, and that's the marketing trick they use. And I don't think it's probably some label that thought of that crap. And I'm in a heavy band. I don't follow that same idea. There's nuance to it, and you can do it however you want. But I don't know, that I think the idea of loyalty has kind of messed up a lot of music, and I gave up on loyalty to genre and those types of things a long time ago.
Totally understandable. And, one of the things that I've always, as John said, I've been kind of a lifetime fan. I remember buying Oh God, the Aftermath the day it came out and being really excited because I had Bless the Martyr before that. And one of the things that I always liked about Norma Jean was that I always felt like as I grew into adulthood, the band grew with me. In a sense, like I'm growing up, you're growing up, you're writing the music, from that older perspective. I guess I hate tying too much into that original question, but one of the things people always ask me is they're like, what do you like about Norma Jean now? And I would just say that it's basically just the fact that as an adult, like I can relate to the lyrics a lot more, as obtuse as they may be sometimes. I can relate to them, and I guess, when we talk about loyalty, to a style of music, but as far as loyalty to fans, I mean, it sounds like I always feel like when I hear a new Norma Jean record, it's hitting me where I'm at right now, as an adult. And is that an intentional thing, or do you think that's just a gradual aging process, I guess, so to speak?
Oh yeah. I mean, really, at least for me, I'm thinking not even just now, I'm thinking of what's, next year, because that's when the record's going to come out. So we try, I don't know, for me, I just try to put lyrically, that's just going to come from a personal place. And I always try to build a theme first, that travels through, the record. And that's going to kind of stay. And I try to think of themes that have a classic feel to them, that aren't just situational on the moment, because those things change all the time, and lots of bands do that. And I don't, like I said, there's no right or wrong way to do that. That's just the way I like to do it. But yeah, musically it is a lot of, I don't know, how does this sound? It's just experimenting. Like at the end of the day, you always come back to the very beginning and start over again. And one thing that we've always had, we finish an album and we go, what the hell are we going to do next? Are we done now? Like, is that it? So, that's why there's 3-year gaps in between albums, because we come out of the studio and we're just like, it's going to be a bit.
Well, speaking
except for the new one, we went straight into writing actually after this, because we're just pumped. So there's a lot of energy in Norma Jean right now, and there's a lot more to come. It really is kind of a rebirth in a sense.
Well, and speaking to themes too, the biggest theme that jumped out of me on Polar Similar was kind of a space theme. I'm a huge fan of Hope's Fall. I mean, just
me too.
Die hard. Like their new record is fucking
I have a Hope's Fall tattoo.
Okay, I'm not that hardcore, but I grew up in a conservative household, man. I was only allowed to listen to the first 2 Hope's Fall records, but the whole
new?
Yeah, right. Their newest record is just fucking unstoppable.
Oh my gosh, dude!
Yeah,
it's
like
nuts.
Yeah,
it's nuts.
I got it on pink vinyl. I'm not ashamed at all, like even a little bit. But
it's so good.
But that's what really drew me to Polar Similar, was that it had kind of a spacey type of theme to it. And that was the first time, like I think on my other podcast I described Norma Jean's sound as like, it's like a rock band that screams that's like covered in like 10 pounds of bacon grease.
Yeah.
And
a little bit sludgy, but cleans up here and there, and it's a lot of left turns.
But what was funny about it is that like my co-host on my other podcast, he was going through like a really dark time in his life. He was just like, I got this going on, I got that going on. I was like, I don't know what to tell you, man. He's like, I just need some kind of, distraction from that or whatever. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. And he's like, oh, okay. So we drove to Taco Bell and I put in Polar Similar. It was like the day the album came out. I popped the CD in, cause I still listen to CDs cause I'm an old person.
Yes.
And, I popped the CD in and he's listening to it. He's like, oh man. He's like, who is this? And I was like, it's Norma Jean. He's like, this Norma Jean? And I was like, yeah. He's like, oh man, this just sounds really. I was like, dude, you know what? You're going through a tough time. You can just have it. Just take it. I'll just go to Best Buy. I'll just go to Best Buy. Yeah, I'll just go to Best Buy in the morning. And now, like, if you listen to that podcast, he always like compares almost every album to Polar Similar. It's hilarious.
Wow.
But as far as the space theme goes, that was kind of the first time that I've really noticed an actual theme, as far as like an atmospheric theme to an album. And I apologize if there were before that I just didn't pick up on, but that was the first time. Yeah, that was the first time I was like, holy shit, they're taking a theme and they're fucking running with it, Like, you end the album with a fucking 3-parter, like the Nexus and shit. Like, it's like, holy wow, okay. Is that something that we can, as fans, can like look forward to in the future? Is there like gonna be a theme, or is that one of those like, hey man, we're just gonna do what we're
Yeah.
gonna do? And
It's kind of so I mean every record is we're experimenting with something, and I can say that I can break down every single record and what that record was in the sense of getting to the next one, where Oh God was just me coming into the band and 4 dudes looking at me going, so got any riffs? And I was like, I got a bunch, and took
I got
it
a
to town.
briefcase full of riffs. Yeah.
Here's a lot of riffs, and I'm not that great of a singer yet, but I'll figure it out along the way, And then Enter Redeemer was just let's experiment with melody and see how that works, and a little more of that, and take some vocal lessons. So, in a sense, that record had to happen to give way to this next one, and then I think by the time we get to the Anti-Mother, that was really, I call it a sacrificial lamb, because that was, let's try singing a lot, but keep it heavy. Like, how can we do that? How can we make a record be heavy and still sing over the whole thing? Is that even possible?
Yeah, I consider it your linchpin record, like 100%. Like, you have Norma Jean up to that point, and then you have Norma Jean after. And even though, like, obviously on later records, you definitely went back to that old sound in places, like you were talking about. There's always that one song.
Yeah. And I think that and that whole thing was just, then we did, Meridional and then Wrongdoers, and it really was to try to make Polar similar.
Yeah.
And Wrongdoers was really us trying to make Polar similar. That's what it was. And so I don't see it as a failure in any way, because like I said, I think it had to happen that way. But when we did get to that record and we finished it, we were like, oh my gosh, we did it. And that was definitely a record where we felt like we ended a trilogy in the sense of Meridional and Wrongdoers and ending with Polar Similar. And so now I think where we are was, how do we just switch it up and really, really go for something totally off the wall without losing ourselves? Because I've seen a lot of bands just go a completely different direction before, and sometimes it turns out to be insane.
Hostfall
did that, and it was great.
Yeah, they worked.
But,
they figured it out. Yeah.
Yeah, they just went straight to it. For us, it's a little different, where we like to take all the elements that we liked from previous things and put it into the new thing. So, yeah, with the new record, it's definitely a kind of we started with a lot of I don't knows, and by the time we finished it, we were blown away on our own, and then just going to Will and recording in a completely different way. I've never heard Norma Jean like this, honestly. It's new territory for sure, but I'm pretty pumped on it. So I can't say what the theme is necessarily. I think it's kind of to be heard, and we're still mixing, so we'll see how it goes. But those elements are still in there. I think I don't know, mixed them in a little more evenly, I guess you could say.
So it's kind of interesting you guys touched on Hope's Ball, and I knew Dan was going to probably ask you the Polar Similar question that he did. So it's one of those things, though, you guys touch on with a band like Hope's Ball where, you look at like Satellite Years or whatever, and a lot of fans, like yourselves, are looking to that band and what they did and how they kind of have traversed their career from sound-wise. And what's interesting to me is, and I didn't want to cut you off to ask this, but it's like, you as a fan, you're able to look at that now and go like, oh, they figured out how to do it perfectly. But from my recollection, I don't really remember fans liking it initially. It was a stark contrast from what there was. And so as a result, I look at a band like I did a whole discography discussion on Deftones where we broke down every record track by track. Now, looking back on something like Adrenaline, with the foresight of seeing already knowing what's gonna come, I was able to look at some of those weird songs where I'm like, what the fuck? This doesn't make any sense on the rest of Adrenaline. But I wondered if this is a Chino song, but we didn't know at the time that Chino played guitar and was writing songs. So with that in mind, looking at a band like them or like a Hopesfall, where in the moment you're like, what the fuck is this? But afterwards you're like, oh my god, they did it so great, and you forget how you felt in the moment. Do you kind of, you're talking about this trilogy of sorts with, those 3 records. Did it feel like to you, are you starting to see fans now come around now that they have all these records and kind of have more of the breadcrumb trail that they're able to follow and go, I get it now, I can see where you were going, but it took all of these records to finally get it? Or are you still getting people who are like, well, I still really don't like Wrongdoers, I think that was a misstep for you guys, but Polar Similar and either record on either end of that are really great? Are you getting that? Or
I think there's 2 different things there. And one is that everyone's going to kind of compare to different things. Like you were saying, your friend compares records to that record now, Polar Similar now.
Yeah.
That's what everyone's going to do. So what I'm saying that Hopesfall nailed it, I'm comparing that to where another band switched up their sound completely and it just tanked.
Yeah.
And they just went so far off the rails that they alienated everything that they had built and had to start over. And then it's like going back to being a local band, like, do you really want to do all that work again? And where I say Hopesfall at least kept some of those elements that kind of stayed in that. It was like a curve rather than just like a,
As long as it sounds like space, it's fine. As long as he's not, it doesn't matter if he's screaming or singing, as long as it has that atmosphere.
You can tell it's those guitar players. You can hear their guitar tone. You can hear, like, even on the new record, it's like, that's the Hopesfall guitar tone. I know that. And but it just sounds great. So that's where I'm coming from with that. But then I think, oh crap, I forgot the thing you just said. Don't edit this out. Keep me forgetting this on the podcast. What was the second thing you said? Oh yeah, or do we get that? Okay, so the second thing I was going to say was, I think sometimes I've learned that from fans. There's so many times when fans have said, "Was this on purpose? This into this?" And I would go, "Nope," but holy crap, I didn't even think about that. So yeah, because a lot of times we are just experimenting around, but it's still us. It's still the guitar tone we like. It's still the type of drums and type of vocals and us trying to, it's like, yeah, we want to sing over this, but we still want it to be heavy. I don't want to lose that for the most part, if the part calls for it. But, so you still have that personality there that's kind of it's just always going to be there because it's us. But yeah, I think people do figure that out and they see kind of where it's going, and I love it. I feel like over the last few years, between Wrongdoers and Polar Similar and to now, it's become a really cool community with Norma Jean and our non-mysterious connection with fans.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't like any of that stuff. I like to talk to people and find out what they think about stuff and get feedback. And, no matter what, I'm going to take that and try to find a way to use it.
Well, and it's funny, you talk a lot about theme and it's still us and all that. And I'm going to jump back a little bit in that, like, something I talked about on my other podcast was, when Norma Jean first started, Josh was the captain of the ship, more or less. And so when you stepped in on Oh God, you became, I don't know if it happened on that record, but it definitely became that way over time. You became the captain of that ship. And so I guess the question I have is, what kind of, or what was that like for you as far as, like, you're coming into this band, at the time, you'd come into a band that was already basically established. I mean, they'd only had one record, or two records if you count Throwing Myself. But, what was that like as far as, like, okay, now what I think and what my ideas are valid enough to dictate the direction of the band? what was that like for you? As far as, you know, did you worry about not necessarily fans, but just you worried about the perception of like, oh my God, this new guy's in here and he's taking it in a whole different direction?
Mm-hmm.
Or was it just kind of one of those like, this is what I've always wanted to do musically, and now that I have this outlet, I'm going to use it?
I think I come from a pretty unique place in that where it wasn't like I was just like a random dude that was like, oh, hey, do you want to try out for Norma Jean kind of thing? Like,
right. Yeah.
At the time, when Josh had left, that record wasn't even out yet.
Right.
And, there was a fill-in a little bit in between. And then, but really what it was is that we were all best friends. We were all really, really good friends. I was doing another band, and we were just fans of each other's band. And so, I mean, this is, late 90s.
Yeah, I know. I'm asking you to jump back like 20 years.
Yeah. So that's really, so from that perspective of, this record hasn't even popped yet. And we're all just friends. And then, Josh tells me, hey, I'm quitting. I was there that day. No one even knows that. I was there the day that it happened, and we're all just good friends. And so I just kind of saw it as like, yeah, I'll come check it out, and see where it goes. I don't think I got like anxious, stressed out, which yes, did happen.
Yeah.
Until it was 2005 and we're putting out a record and I got to perform. And at that point, I'd only recorded one record and a 2-song EP, and not in a real studio, not really. So being in that position of, can I even do this? You find out a lot about yourself in that time. So yeah, it's a little of both, but coming into it, I just saw it as like, I'm going to go play music with my friends who I've known for a long time, and make music in Atlanta, and travel to Atlanta for 9.5 years and see where it goes. And that was late 2003. And I'm still here.
Yeah.
and like I said, I think that's where my perception of, I was like, I have to ditch the idea of being loyal to a face because that's what you want. And we were all so very lucky to have the Chariot and now 68. So it's like, think about that too,
Right.
like I want that. Yeah, I wanted to hear that. So there's so many good things that came out of it. And I don't think there's a way to find a negative in that unless you just need the title of this band to go with a certain guy.
Yeah, there's no negative at all. Like, I mean, I remember thinking at that time, like, okay, one of my favorite bands just morphed into 2 bands that I like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it was definitely, for me, it wasn't a negative at all, but like, it's just interesting to see somebody come in and it be this like, quote unquote, it seemed like a great legacy back in 2002, right? Or like 2001. To come in and basically, because when I think of Norma Jean now, I can't even imagine, like, when I go back and listen to Bless the Martyr, I'm like, it's not even the same band. You know what I mean? Like, it's like when Oh God came out, I started listening to this new band called Norma Jean, and
Yeah.
But that was cool, and I definitely, as a fan, I mean, I'm sorry, I already went into this for like 2 hours on my other podcast, but like it was definitely cool, and I think it was interesting seeing kind of more of a melodic side thrown into the band, a little bit more of like a personality.
Yeah, I think that's important to talk about too. If you're going to really talk about the history of everything, is that when I came into, that was kind of a common direction that everyone wanted to go in. So it's not like I came in and was like, this is what we're going to do now. I was definitely presenting lots of ideas, but, Scotty was a very strong songwriter, and, tons of the stuff that was on Redeemer, The Anti-Mother, Meridional were stuff that was coming from him. And so it was kind of already a trajectory that I was thrown into. So where we are now is really the path it was going in. I mean, it's like, no original members are in the band. Well, they were here all the way up until it turned into what it is now.
Right.
And except for one guy. And so you think about it that way, it does kind of, you see where the history was. And then, anyone leaving it to us, it was always just, we're friends. Like, if you want to go start a family and buy a home and do something else, like, I got to support that. I want to support my friends and trying different things. But, I was solidified, I've uplifted my entire life to do this. So for me, it was just like, I'm going to keep it going. And, all the way into Wrongdoers with me and Chris and Jeff coming in and all the way to Polar Similar with me and Jeff and Goose and stuff. So it has a path that it was going to take, whether we liked it or not. And like I said, I think that if we had been so anchored in the idea of, loyalty to a brand or, a band name kind of thing, that, we probably would have made a lot more musical mistakes along the way trying to keep that up.
Sure.
So I think it was best for us to just kind of ignore it.
So something I kind of wanted to hit on as we're slowly wrapping up, because I know we got to let you go here pretty quickly. What's going on with 100 Sons?
Oh, we are broke and in debt. And
Love it.
We live in different countries.
Yep.
And it's so hard to do anything. And it sucks because we talk every day, and we just talk about how we wish we could, be closer to just play a show, So we are trying to do that still. We're trying to play some music and get out of debt. And we are also writing. So I've already demoed a couple of things, and it sounds really cool. So, I mean, that's just been a passion project from the beginning. And again, just like me and Chris have been friends for a long time, we wanted to work with each other. So, for us, it's just a way to do that and make it cool and make our own thing from, the very beginning, something that we created. And so that's kind of a fun thing, I guess you could say. But I don't know. I would do that a lot more if I could. Someone pay for us to do it.
I just thought it was fitting that it's like by the time that a project got announced, Legs had just, basically left Every Time I Die, which then caused Goose to go, to go over there. And so it was just one of those things that was really weird timing-wise. It's like, oh, I'm not doing this touring band thing. I'm not doing the band thing anymore. And then it seemed like 2-3 months later, it's like, hey, I got this new band, 100 Sons. And I was like, wait, what the fuck?
It was actually quite a bit later. He'd already been out of, because Daniel was on a record in between and stuff. But yeah, I like to say that us and Every Time I Die like to play drummer musical chairs.
Yeah.
And we like to trade drummers, and it's like a fun little thing. I think it's hilarious and should be fun. I don't know if they've addressed it at all, but I think it's awesome. And I back it 100%.
Well, then I feel like a weird split 7-inch where you swap drummers currently, and cover one of each other's songs. I think would be a fun, weird thing to do.
Dude, I'll pre-order that right now if that's a thing. Yeah.
I'll get to work on the artwork right away so we can throw the pre-orders.
Okay.
That's the funny thing about this podcast. It's with John being the massive Every Time I Die fan and me being the massive Norma Jean fan. It was like, yeah, when 100 Suns was announced, I was like, holy shit! Now my favorite band, one of my favorite bands, is like split into like 5 different fucking bands. You know?
Yeah,
it was awesome.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I mean, that's a good combo, if you ask me.
Oh yeah,
I think people ask us all the time, like, why did why wouldn't Norma Jean and Every Time I Die do a tour? It's like we did
Warped Tour, and
yeah,
you've done other
absolutely.
tours.
Well, we did a tour in the States, and it kind of didn't do great because
hey, I was there.
I think it's one of those things that it's like we have the same fans for the most part. Like we're not bringing anybody. I'm not bringing anybody to the table for you. You're not bringing the table for me. It's not. It's just like we get all the best. We get the best of the best, which is great. But it was fun to do, but it's not really realistic when you think about it.
Oddly enough, because I saw you on that He Is Legend run that came here through GR, I feel like that was the same. Like I didn't see. I saw a lot of people during He Is Legend, and I didn't see like more people trickling in after they were done. Because I came in, I was like, this is decently packed for this room, but no one else came in when they were done. And I was like, huh. I
think our tours with them are some of the best ones because they actually do bring some different people out but yeah, because a lot of a tour, like people don't realize too, when you do a tour with any band, you're going to have fans of all those bands. The headliner is going to take the hit usually more than anyone, unless they're just massive.
Right.
And so you're going to have walkouts and stuff. But with He's Legend, we've been pretty lucky that people stick around and we don't have that issue. But yeah, walkouts are a thing. It's like I'm coming to see you guys and then I'm leaving. It's like that's cool. Like that. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to. You don't necessarily have to feel bad about that, okay. In my opinion. But I that probably isn't okay to say, but no, I don't know.
It's probably not.
I don't know, man. Like I do that. I'm not going to try to pretend like I don't go to a show and watch the band I came to see and then peace out. But yeah, I'll usually stick around and check out at least a little bit. And then there's tons of times when it's like, oh, the headliner is the band I'm not familiar with. And I ended up liking the band. So, everyone's got to do I mean, at the end of the day, it's the entertainment industry, everyone. It's
business.
Get rid of this loyalty stuff because it's music and it's not a club. It's not like that. I think for us, we always think we got 30 minutes on stage or an hour. Then I better put every single bit of everything I can into that 30 minutes or 1 hour because these people paid their hard-earned 9 to 5 money to come see my dumb band play. Get away from something and be in a place where you get away from whatever you might be going through outside those doors and let loose and stuff. So yeah, at those times I embrace the entertainment side of it. We're on a stage, we're the loudest thing in the room, all the lights are facing us. Let's put on a rock show.
So like you have to play Memphis at the end of the night, right? Like
sometimes
you have to.
Sometimes don't have to. We actually haven't been playing it, and it's been fine. It's been cool. We ended the In Flames tour with Deathbed, and it was a lot of fun.
One of the questions I'd ask is like, so your guys' return to Solid State was interesting to me because obviously you had come up as a Solid State band, and then you moved away to Razor and Tie for a while and went back to Solid State. Is Solid State still the same company that it was before, or is it like changed ownership? Because I know for a while they were Tooth and Nails. It was basically Tooth and Nail for
it's
heavy
still
bands. Okay.
It's still that, but I don't know. It's kind of a lot of boring, like, because I think, the label thing is weird because essentially it's just, it's kind of like you're working with passionate investors. And for us, we're looking for people who are the most excited about what we're doing at the time. And I think, and I can't answer for Solid State, but all I know is that they went through a little transitional period, and they broke off with a parent label that they were a part of, a much bigger conglomerate
it was EMI,
type thing,
which was just like a strictly Christian music label.
Yeah, which is basically Universal too,
Right.
by the way.
Right.
So I think when they were able to get back to being an indie label, which is where they are now, and which is where we originally had signed with, they were able to have a lot more freedom. And so that was kind of what was happening at the time. Was we had everything that we wanted for the Anti-Mother, went through so much red tape.
Oh, I believe it 100%. Yeah.
When you have a parent label basically saying, just say no to everything. And we literally got told that. We were told eventually, way later, that they were stuck and there was nothing they could do, and they were also trapped in that sense. So they're free, and it's awesome now, man. So we're so stoked to be back with them and to do this next album with them. And they have, I hope it stays like this forever, because it's the actual dream that we've been waiting for years and years, and they're just the best people.
Well, yeah, and I love the more modern Solid State and the more modern Tooth and Nail. Polar Similar, one of the biggest things was, you guys said fuck on a record, which, like, doesn't bother me as an individual at all. But, like, back in, the Redeemer days or the Oh God days, that would not have been a thing that would have been okay,
Well, to be fair, we didn't tell them.
Well, the Deftones.
And go ahead and press
and
it.
they were kind of bummed, but I feel like if that's going to get brought up, I got to explain.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
And that just comes from a deeper thing with me, in that I just don't think a word by itself can be bad.
No,
I think intention is important. And for what that song is about, it's about, protecting yourself and your boundaries and your livelihood, your family, with whatever it takes in a very, very serious moment, or circumstance.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was just, that's what goes there. It is, I'm not fucking around.
Yeah.
Like, you crossed a line and I have to close that off. And it's not a negative thing towards anyone. It's not calling someone a name or whatever that. It's just a very, very passionate response to something. And so the intention is important. And I think that that's what people should always pay attention to when they hear the bad words in the world, is what context was it in? What was the intention? Because if you're going to talk about, censorship, which I do not think should exist, then you have to at least look into that deeper, because if not, we will censor everything. We'll censor anything and everything. So that's just a personal belief. I know a lot of my fellow brothers and sisters in Christ don't agree with me on that. And it's okay. We can't agree on everything. But I'm not, I'm not apologetic about it all. I meant what I said on that song. And I think it's an important song for me, at least.
Yeah, and I mean, I largely agree. I mean, I'm definitely like a card-carrying, go to church every Sunday,
Yeah.
Christian, but like, I definitely, that added so much to the impact of that song.
Absolutely. And the whole emotion behind that part and the build up and just the silence there and that, I mean, I wanted that guitar part to go for 3 minutes. Like originally I was like, just don't stop playing that guitar part until you feel like, I just want to hear that forever until it just comes in. So it was meant to be this very intense, and part of me singing that part's almost, you can't really understand what I'm saying, just listening to it. And it's because I didn't want it to be this like hardcore kind of like, I'm not fucking,
Right, sure,
like
yeah.
tough guy thing.
Like a throwdown.
I wanted
like
to be
fucking,
like a total freak out. Like, like really like I'm going to punch some walls and totally lose my mind in a purposeful, emotional way. So that's what that part is. And I think that's what comes across if you really understand those things. So, again, intention is important. Context.
So I was doing an episode on my other podcast, Discography Discussion. We were talking about POD and how they did their song "Murdered Love," where they said "fuck," but then they edited it for the actual release.
Mm-hmm.
And what was funny is they were, we were joking about that, and we started talking about I was like, well, Norma Jean said "fuck" on an album, and nobody cared. You know what I mean? Like there wasn't the blowback, at least as far as I saw, from that. And I was like, I think it was fine for the song, and like perfect, And my co-host, the guy that I was talking about that had that compares everything to Polar Similar, goes, I'm not convinced he's saying fucking. It sounds more like he's saying I'm not fapping around. And I was like, holy shit. I was like, if he actually said
that also
fapping,
works.
I was going to say, if he actually said fapping, that makes it 100 times better.
Hey, that also works. The same context works.
Right. Well, that's what I said.
It's just a little more comical that way.
That's what I said. I was like, dude, if he actually said fapping, that's like way more Cory than, than we were willing to admit.
I used to have a rule on tour where if someone on the tour said, hey, are you saying this on this song? And it was always wrong. I had a personal rule. No one made me do this. I don't know why I do this to myself. I think it's funny to embarrass myself is probably why, but I had to sing it that night at least one time. And I mean, I've said like bringing a duck to a cockfight.
Oh shit.
I've said, oh man, I've said so many insane things, and some of them have just been very, very audible.
Right.
It's like, what did you change the lyrics? Yes, I did. And I thought it was funny. So now I'll try to remember that. And next time we play that song, I'll throw it in for y'all.
If you're in St. Louis, at least, please.
Yeah. Okay. We come through St. Louis. I think we are too pretty soon. So I'll try to remember. Maybe hit me up and remind me.
I will, because like if you come to St. Louis, I will definitely bring you beer.
All right, bro.
That's the agreement I made with Zayo, and I will also make with you that if you come to St. Louis, I will absolutely bring you beer. So
Grand Rapids has better beer.
He's full of shit. Don't listen to him.
Tell me I'm wrong.
He's full of shit. Don't listen to him. We have the best beer. We have a terrible music scene, but we have great beer.
I believe I remember you asking me to get you a bottle of KBS this year.
Hey, you know what? You need to shut up about that.
Hey, it's all good to me. So
Well,
people always have the barbecue thing too. Like the best barbecue is here. I'm like, all of it's good. I don't know what everywhere. I don't need one to be better.
There's not bad barbecue. Yeah, like as long as you're cooking in a pit in a parking lot, you're good.
There is bad beer though. That's a different thing.
Well, kind of in wrapping this up, where can everyone find you and or the band?
We're all over the internet, so on all the social media sites. I don't know, man. You can find me at Cory Brandan, Brandan on Twitter and everywhere else. And the band is Norma Jean Band everywhere else. NormaJeanNoise.com. You can check out dates and stuff, and we'll have a lot of announcements coming up pretty soon. A lot of music and cool, really cool things. We get to do cool stuff pretty soon, so we're excited.
Well, thank you for taking the time, and looking forward to the new record and subsequent touring. I know Dan will be.
Oh,
awesome.
Dude, I'm stoked. I can't wait. I'll bring like 10 people. It's fine.
He's probably pre-ordering this podcast as we speak.
Absolutely, dude. I'm all about that shit. Like 100%.
So that was our conversation with Cory Brandan of Norma Jean. Dan, once again, did the heavy lifting. So, I mean, for someone who has spent a lot of time trying to get Cory on the podcast, how was this for you?
It was very enjoyable. Thank you for asking. No, it was a lot of fun. And it was definitely a bucket list interview, and I'm hoping to repeat the same thing in about a week or so here. But yeah, no, it was a good conversation. I definitely enjoyed his willingness to dig into some of the topics that maybe he's discussed before on other podcasts. Although I can't really think of any time where he's talked about this stuff specifically. But like, I really wanted to dig into that, like. What was it like, becoming the new captain of the ship? What was it like steering the band in a direction that, maybe fans would appreciate or wouldn't appreciate? But one of the things I found really interesting, considering how much their sound has changed over the time, over the last decade or so, how he was still very much like, yeah, but, we still try to do something for the people that only like the first album. Or we really love people that only love the first album. That's not the response that I was expecting to get, and so it was pretty refreshing.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting because, I mean, I realized after the fact how shitty my question may have come off. Like, there's no original members in the band. What is the point of trying to sound like a band that you weren't really a part of, continuing to move forward? Like, to me, I would almost be like, that was then, this is now, we aren't those people aren't us, so there's no need to pay it forward by paying respects to what came before it. And maybe that's a weird thing to say, but like, I don't see, and this is a question I was going to ask, but we kind of asked it in a more polite way, but it's like, you look at a band like Killswitch Engage, who has had 2 singers, you look at, a band like, we'll even go with Van Halen. There's plenty of bands. Haste the Day. There's plenty of bands that have had multiple singers and so forth. Drowning Pool.
Yeah, we could go on and on. Yeah.
And the thing becomes, though, is I would say a lot of those bands, while they sort of tip the hat to who came before them, everybody has kind of moved on and doesn't feel the need to necessarily repeat what they've already done or kind of pay homage to it. And so the fact that Cory, honestly, at this point, like with how long he's been in the band, you might as well call him an original member, because I don't think any original member has been in the long as Cory has at this point. So the fact that he still, and the band still feels this need to appease fans from the very beginning is kind of interesting, given the fact that it seems like they're potentially a very fickle fan base that honestly probably doesn't care that they actually put forth the effort to do such a thing.
Yeah, I mean, and, there's jerks like me that'll just criticize it, like, oh, this sounds cool, but it doesn't sound like Bless the Martyr cool, I think I spent like a couple hours explaining that. But I think it was refreshing because, like, he was very open about the fact that he was a fan of the old Norma Jean and he was friends with. And so I think, part of their mindset behind picking him as the singer, early on was because he was a like-minded individual. And they put out an album like Oh God, The Aftermath, which was very much in the same vein.
Did you know that he was there when Josh quit the band? I don't think I've ever heard that.
I don't think I've heard him say that before. Yeah, that's news to me. It's weird too because they had that horrible dude in there for a while doing vocals in place of Josh for like half a year or something. They had another guy, and he was really bad. No, like really bad. You can if you pull up the I think it's the Hellfest video on YouTube. It's got that guy on there, and it's literally the worst singing to a Norma Jean song I've ever heard. But all that aside, it was a good chat for sure, and I really enjoyed talking to him. And like I was saying in the intro, I try really hard not to sound overtly familiar, because you don't want to get like too touchy-feely with somebody, because at the end of the day, you don't know them. This is your first time really talking to them. but I thought that was really interesting because it reminded me of something else that had happened to me a couple weeks ago, where I walk into a Best Buy, and I had been at that Best Buy for like 3 or 4 months. I'd been there 3 or 4 months earlier buying like a USB thumbstick or something, and I went in to spend some extra rewards points or something that I had. But the first time that I went in there a few months ago, I met this guy who was just like, "Hey, I like your shirt," or whatever. And I was like, "Oh yeah," I was like, "Oh, you like metal, heavy music or whatever?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Okay, well, I've got 2 podcasts where that's what we do, like we talk about music and metal and hardcore and all that stuff." And he's like, "Oh yeah, cool, I'll check it out." So then whenever I come in there like a week ago, he approaches me as soon as I walk into the store, and he's just all like, "Oh, hey Dan, how are you? How are things going?" And this is not weird. Like, I mean, he was a totally cool dude, and I appreciate him talking with me and everything. But it was kind of funny how familiar he was with me the second time, because like in that 3 or 4 month stretch, this dude's probably listened to like 60 hours of me talking. And I thought that was really weird. I thought it was weird. I didn't think it was creepy or anything, but I could kind of see how if it was with the wrong person, it would be creepy, but no, this dude was cool. But it just got me thinking, like, how I probably feel that way about a lot of bands because I've been listening to them forever. It was kind of that way with Hope's Fall. It was definitely that way with Zao, and it definitely was. Just an interesting thing to think about, as far as me and my growth as an interviewer. Like, it's cool to be familiar, but maybe don't like creep people out, because I'm trying to think too of how many other podcasters like you think you just know because you've listened to their voice for hundreds of hours.
Yeah, it's I think it's an interesting line to kind of have to straddle, especially like you said, you feel like you know them because you've spent countless hours with them and watching pseudo personal experiences that they've had. However, you're not a part of their day to day, so like something that like an inside joke that you have taken from like a DVD is long gone and forgotten about.
Yeah, it's funny because I know like when we did on discography discussion, we did that contortionist episode, and I talked a lot about like depression and stuff like that, and I have had people email me or approach me before and be like, "Hey, I just hope everything's going all right with you and everything's good." And I was like, "Oh, dude, that was like 4 years ago. Like that's we're past that now."
Yeah. Kind of in wrapping up though, just because I feel like anything we talk about after this will just kind of be beating a dead horse.
Absolutely. Let's just beat it.
If you would like to follow Norma Jean, you can find them on Facebook at Norma Jean, Instagram at Norma Jean Band, as well as Twitter at Norma Jean Band. If you would like to follow Cory, you can find him simply enough at Cory Brandan, all one word, on Twitter and Instagram. And if you would like to keep up with Metal Nexus, you can find them on metalnexus.net, Facebook at Metal Nexus, Instagram at metal.nexus, and Twitter at metal_nexus. And Dan, where can people find you?
You can find me on Facebook under Daniel Terry. You can find me on Twitter at Discuss Metal Dan. You can send me an email at danandjoeshow@gmail.com. And you can also find my other podcast on discussmetal.com.
And if you would like to keep up with all things this podcast, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at BrewSpeakPod. Email us at BrewtallySpeaking@gmail.com. And if you want to go to YouTube, you can find us there at Brewtally Speaking. And for the Brewtally Speaking podcast this week, I am John.
And I am Dan.
And we will talk to you all next time.